When you retire at 45, you begin to understand that life isn't a detective story where all the pieces fit together perfectly. In the real world, nothing ends with the resolution of a crime. You're left with the fragments of what you once called the truth. I was a good detective. Everyone said so. But there's one case that left a mark on me, one that neither alcohol, nor pills, nor sleepless nights could erase. Why am I telling this now? Because time is running out, and I've earned the right to at least try to clear my conscience. And because no one else is alive to tell this story. And after hearing this, you may never sleep peacefully again. It was back in 2009. I'd already been in the Criminal Investigation Unit for 10 years. A small town on the edge of the country. You probably wouldn't even find it on a map. But beneath the peaceful exterior, something darker lurked. One of the most disturbing stories I've ever encountered. A case I'll simply call the missing children. It all started with one disappearance. A little girl, about 5 years old, went to school and never returned. At first, her parents thought she was staying late at a friend's house. Then they panicked when they realized no one had seen her for hours. On the third day, after fruitless searches, they came to us. Back then, it seemed like a simple case. Kids often disappear, only to be found at a friend's house or on the local playground. But this case was different. I remember the morning I was called into the chief's office. His voice was tense, which was unusual for him, as he rarely showed emotion. But this time, something in his tone made me feel uneasy. "You're taking this case, Max," he said, and with those words, the darkest chapter of my life began. I started at the place where the girl was last seen, her school. I questioned the teachers, her classmates, trying to find any clue. But no one could give a straight answer. Everyone saw her leave the school, but after that, her trail vanished. The street she usually took home was empty. I met with the parents. They were exhausted from constant worry. Their eyes reflected sheer terror. The girl's father, Andre, was a strong man, but I could see how torn apart he was inside. His wife, Alina, could barely hold back tears every time she heard her daughter's name. In these kinds of cases, you try to keep a professional distance from emotions. But with these people, it was hard not to empathize. A week after the disappearance, it became clear that the case was dragging on. We had searched every corner of the town, interviewed hundreds of people, but had no results. The child had vanished, as if into thin air. And then, another child went missing. This time, a 6-year-old boy. His case was eerily similar to the first. He left for school but never made it there. Gone without a trace. We were starting to realize this wasn't a coincidence. The town was overtaken by panic. Parents were afraid to let their children out of the house. Everyone was talking about a serial kidnapper, but we had no solid leads. Each day, we awaited news, and each day it became harder to find the strength to continue the investigation. Then I stumbled upon an interesting detail. All the missing children lived within 5 blocks of an old, abandoned factory. It used to be a furniture manufacturing plant, but had been shut down for over 10 years. The building stood as a derelict shell, home to vagrants, drug addicts, and other outcasts. One evening, just as the sun was setting, my partner and I decided to check out that building. The factory was dark and decrepit, a relic of another era. The smell of dampness and decay filled the air. We moved cautiously inside, our flashlights illuminating peeling walls and abandoned machines where people once worked. And then we heard a sound. It was faint, like the rustling of an old ventilation system, but distinctly unnatural. We followed the sound, and as we went deeper into the factory's basement, we found a hidden passage. Beneath some old wooden planks was a secret room. In the darkness of that room, we found scattered children's toys. Some were worn and tattered with time, others new, as if someone had recently brought them there. But what shocked us most was the sight of a boy, huddled in one corner, trapped inside an old cage. He was so weak, he could barely lift his head. We immediately called for backup. The boy told us he had been kidnapped while on his way to school. He didn't remember who took him because he had been drugged almost immediately. He knew nothing about the other children. And at that moment, I realized we were just at the beginning of the investigation, and the real criminal was still out there. 5 days after this discovery, we thought we were finally on the right track. But our investigation hit a wall. The kidnapper was still out there. The search continued, and each new day brought more fear to the hearts of the townspeople. One morning, I received a call from an anonymous source. The quiet, tense voice on the other end said they knew where the other children were, and that the place was in the very heart of the town. The voice gave me a precise address. We rushed there immediately. It was an old apartment in the historical part of the town. All the doors were locked from the inside. We started breaking them down, but as soon as we entered, we were confronted with a horrifying scene. Children lay on the floor, lifeless, and next to them on the table was a note. I only needed one. The rest were just mistakes. Those words haunt me to this day. After that case, I was never the same again. The town slowly began to forget about the tragedy, but I know that the evil hasn't gone away. It's just waiting for its moment. Now, years later, I understand that this crime was only part of something bigger. I've retired, but the case still haunts me. Although it was officially closed, with the kidnapper never found, I've always felt that more secrets remain, hidden in plain sight, that no one wants to uncover. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I still hear that same faint sound we heard in the factory's basement, and I think, this may only be the beginning. You might be asking yourself, what next? Honestly, I don't have an answer. Sometimes I feel like I've sunk too deep into this nightmare, unable to find my way out. Maybe the criminal is still out there, watching, waiting, continuing their game. Maybe they laugh at how we manage to uncover only a fragment of the truth while everything else remains hidden. Or maybe they've changed their methods and are playing by new rules. I continued investigating the case on my own. After I retired, I had plenty of time to analyze every piece of evidence, every tiny detail we might have missed. I even contacted private investigators willing to help. But everything we found was just a shadow of the real story. One day, when I was almost ready to let it all go, a man approached me. His name doesn't matter, but his words made me question everything. He claimed to know who was behind the disappearances. I listened silently as he explained there was an underground network, one involved in the abduction of children for dark rituals. Sounds insane, right? I didn't believe it at first either. But over time, as I dug deeper, I found more evidence than I was ready to accept. The thing is, these children weren't chosen at random. They had a specific common trait that I initially overlooked. The little girl, the first one to go missing, had a rare genetic mutation. So did the others. They were being deliberately targeted, and their disappearances were no accident. It was a carefully planned hunt. I felt I was getting closer to something enormous, but I understood that continuing would cost me my life. Yet I couldn't stop. Soon enough, I found confirmation of my suspicions. The old factory wasn't as innocent as it seemed. Its owner hadn't just made furniture. The place had a deeper, darker purpose, and the factory was merely a front for a shadowy business. It was part of an ancient conspiracy that had spanned decades, and all the people who had worked there knew exactly what was going on. As I dug deeper, I made another shocking discovery. Among the factory's property documents I obtained, there was one striking detail. The building had belonged to the same person for over 100 years, but its owner had never changed. This was impossible. Yet the paperwork indicated that the owner had been alive for over a century and, seemingly, had not aged. I began to realize that I was dealing with something much larger than just a serial kidnapper. Those children didn't just disappear. They were sacrificed to prolong this person's life. And this wasn't some old legend or myth. Everything pointed to the fact that this conspiracy involved powerful forces far beyond our understanding. I decided that I had to expose it all. But as soon as I started preparing the materials to hand over to the police, something strange happened. One morning, I woke up with the feeling that I was being watched. Every step, every phone call, I felt like I wasn't alone. Soon, I realized I had become a target. People from that network began coming to my house. They didn't hide. They knew I noticed them, and that was their goal, to show me they were there and could do whatever they wanted. All my documents disappeared. No evidence, no traces. Everything was wiped clean. But I can't stay silent. That's why I'm telling you this story. If you're listening to this now, maybe I no longer have anything to fear. Maybe I'm not even alive anymore. But you need to know the truth. Maybe you'll be able to uncover what I couldn't. Maybe you can break this horrifying chain of events and put an end to it. The town has forgotten about the missing children, but I know it's only a matter of time before it all starts again. They're waiting for new victims. And if you live in a place where children have vanished, stay vigilant. You never know who might be hiding behind the door next to yours. It could be someone you know, or maybe you could be the next target. If you know something about similar cases, don't stay silent. Share your suspicions in the comments. I know there are still people out there fighting this evil. Maybe you're one of them. Forgive me for any inaccuracies in my story. It's so twisted, even I'm not sure of everything that happened. But if you've noticed something that could help with the investigation, let us know. And remember, evil can hide around any corner, but sometimes you just have to dare to look at it. If you want to know more, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments, or maybe even stories you know. Together, we might uncover the truth. By the way, this story was voiced by a neural network for certain reasons, so I apologize for any mistakes or inaccuracies in the narration. I hope you understand.